All right, I have 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We do have Richard and David Nolan are absent, but we do have a quorum. So we'll go ahead and get started. You guys have the minutes. If there are no changes, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve. I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are accepted. We'll move into the department reviews. EMA. I think the first page is their budget where they're at right now. Matt, do you have anything that you want to?
Only yes. Only thing I have.
Yeah, you can move up here if you want. Well, go.
Only thing to add for the EMA would be we finished working on the emergency operations plan that's being sent up for FEMA to get their approval on it. and
Great.
Hopefully we'll hear back on the same on it. With not a tremendous amount of change made in it.
Okay. You guys have any questions over there? Budget to date? All right,
One question. Sure. And this is for clarification purposes, because I think I've got my information right. I just want to make sure. When it comes to billing for ambulance service, we're set by whatever contract we do with the insurance company, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if Blue Cross Blue Shield says all you can bill is $800, we bill 1,000. We're in breach of their contract and they're gonna pay into it, right?
No, it would just whatever, like, so most insurance companies base their rates off whatever Medicare allowance are. So if Blue Cross Blue Shield, we don't contract the ambulance services, so we don't even think about them, but it's the head or somebody else.
Yeah.
So they're gonna pay $600.
Yeah.
And we bill $700 or $800.
Okay.
But whatever they'll pay is what we bill the patient. So the remaining balance that go through.
Okay. So when was the last time that rate was adjusted?
It's been since I've been here, but it's been a few years.
What's needed to look into that as far as that being adjusted for just inflation, cost of labor, cost of new vehicles, whatnot?
Get approval by building body.
I guess where I'm coming from is just gathering that information, what's involved there. Is that something that?
I don't notice how they increase revenue tremendously.
Yeah.
I mean, it's may change it a little bit, but we collect roughly 50% of what we bill, so I mean, it may give us a small margin of increase. But the insurance company still gonna pay what they're gonna pay, we're just passing on what's left over to the patient, so it's not an undoable thing.
Okay.
I think we're fairly close to most of our counties around us. I think Sumner County maybe more like. I think we're fairly close.
With everything else going up, I was wanting to see kind of where we were on what.
Yeah, we're right at what everybody else around Sumner County. That's where the funds are.
Okay.
so in reviewing rates, is that something you do or we do as a committee, or you can come up with some reviews and give that to us next month?
What other counties are billing?
Yes,
Yes, of course.
I think that's a good plan. I was just looking over your reports and I just, I averaged out your numbers of transports, then that equal to about $884 per call is what was billed. And for me, that seems a little low. And I'm not coming at you guys as the billing department or EMS or anything, just trying to be a good steward of taxpayer money and, trying to see if we can increase revenues.
Sure.
So yes, if we can do that. You guys have any questions over the monthly report for May on EMS? Yeah, sure.
The ambulance, the new one that's on order has been pushed out. Dodge has a recall on a wiring harness, so the vendor talked to me the other day. They're looking at 6 months to come up with a remedy to it, so adding 6 months just to figure out how to fix it. He said he's not sure how long it'll take additional to that to actually implement the remedy to get the vehicles further safe. And that's where we might start looking at go ahead and buy or remount the ambulance in the near future, because we're looking still 18 to 24 months just to get a chassis. So we're looking at 2 to potentially 30 years on another one to order today.
So
Crazy.
they're one that you would replace with that, the chassis was wearing out, it's not the box itself.
So we can,
That's, yeah,
I thought this like, hey, you're looking around 150 to do that versus double that
Yeah.
for a new.
If you guys will look at the EMS collections, I had Amy, do these reports for fiscal year 2022 and 23. And if you take out the insurance, the contracted rate, then they're actually collecting 74%, which is pretty good. I think that's pretty good. I do just want to point out that every month, in fiscal year 2022 and 2023, up until we passed the new resolution, there was other write-offs. And then we passed the resolution and there were no other write-offs. And the bad debt column increased, not necessarily significantly, but it did increase. And I'm not accusing anything. It's questionable to me.
I know that's first.
Okay.
Well, I mean, my only suggestion, and this is just me making an assumption,
Sure.
is that the people that normally would get the write-off, or that she says those who aren't providing the information that other people in the past have for justification for the write-off.
Okay, that would make sense. So then we don't write it off in the other category, we just write it off in bad debt because they're not paying for it
Correct, so
anyway.
they get 6 invoices sent to them, and then there's
Right,
no response, then you can start out a collection. And I did find out we get 70% of whatever the collection that the collection agency gets.
But they're only collecting, I think we talked about, they're only collecting about
70%, I think is what we said,
7, yeah, like you send them. Yeah,
Right.
they only collect 7%, and there's no other collection agency that we could,
I don't know that it would make a difference what collection agency it is. We could try a different one if that's what y'all would like us to do.
I mean, I don't know, I just trying to figure out a way to increase revenues, that's my only motivation.
See what Smith and Macon and some that they use and see if they use somebody different. See
Sure.
what their collection rate is.
Great.
We can bring that to-
That would be great. Great. You guys have anything on EMS? Any questions?
and I do have one question, because I've heard the topic brought up a couple of times in conversation. I'm just curious, do we have, I know that our EMTs, when they're on staff, have to stay at the facility. So they're sleeping and food arrangements and whatnot there for them. But if they're off the clock, do we have a policy that, they have to leave the facility when they're off the clock, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, there's a visiting hours section, I think 10 o'clock at the cutoff. So usually what I recommend is a very fast one. I don't know anybody that stays and visits overnight.
Looking at your overtime, it looks like there's 17,000 left. Is that gonna be enough to get through the fiscal year?
See, I'd have to check on that for sure. 17 sounds like it might be pretty close. I'll have to run the. Looking back, but you're, I don't know, give with Amy on just to make sure that she's, the numbers you agree on.
Sure, Sure.
Everybody's got a different break.
absolutely. Any more discussion on the ambulance service? I don't have.
How many people applied on that when y'all put it out that we needed paramedics?
None that I'm aware of, unless there's some applications that. HR have been told about.
And what's the staffing situation right now? How many are you
We're
short?
gonna change, we're saying that we've had made in the last couple of months. So we're short 2 paramedics just to put it 2 on each shift.
Okay.
We're 1 shift.
And what are we doing to advertise that? I mean, I've seen it on Facebook,
Yeah,
but
we can put it on Facebook and still get some EMT applications on Indeed, but. If using EMTs right now. So you got surplus as it is.
I think we talked about in budget hearings about doing like part-time or PRN. Is that making any,
They get pulled out of the budget, finance.
So that's not in there?
No.
Okay,
I believe was sitting in that meeting that the money was taken away, but you weren't told you couldn't do it. They just reduced the amount of money you had to do it.
They took all of it out. They only cut 10% out. That was the majority of the 10%.
but if you have open positions, then you still have money in your payroll budget that you could hire part-time positions.
Yeah, two. I could feel it.
So are we only down two, Matt, or are we down more down paramedic level?
Well, we typically ran 9 paramedics. So we've got 4, but some of those paramedic positions are now being filled by EMTs that just we do. Like that trucks.
I mean, right now, there's a lot of counties hiring for paramedics. They can't even get what they need right now, other counties.
That's very true.
I don't know if the situation changed or not, but talking with the director at Sumner, he had a couple of his leave because of, for lack of hazard pay. But they were talking about taking it away. I don't know. I haven't talked to him since that discussion, so I don't know if that actually went through their commission, but
As far as I know, they're pulling that was COVID money, and when that money ran out, I think they were told up front even that it wouldn't guarantee that they would maintain that pay rate.
other suggestion is, do we have a paramedic training facility in Middle Tennessee?
Ball State is probably the primary one. There's several other schools that do.
Are we doing any recruiting at Ball State for paramedics?
They'll call me, their director, Eric, I know him pretty well, taught at Ball State for a little while, but most of the time, by the time you're in paramedic school, you're already employed somewhere, because you're in advance, and they set the whole program up around people who work shift schedules. So I don't know anybody that just goes to paramedic school and doesn't already have the job somewhere else, because they're typically getting paid for it by somebody.
Is there an arrangement with Ball State that we can't go in there and try to grab some of those anyway?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is it not possible to get surrounding counties where their schedule is different from our schedule and they can work a shift here and there as a part-time position?
I think it's dangerous though. Now you're running into.
But isn't that what
24
haven't they done that for years?
Yeah, but we just complained about running multiple 24-hour shifts.
Well, that was the same person 24 hours in a row.
But if you're doing 3 24s in Lebanon and you come here and do 3 24s, you're still doing 6 24s in a row.
But that's the whole point of having a PRN position.
So
Yeah.
I'll throw my 2 cents on this. Over the last 2 weeks, I have worked a 48-hour shift with 2 48-hour shifts in Wilson County with a 24-hour off in between. Took 2 days off and I just finished another 48. And in that entire span of working those 7 or 8 shifts in the last 2 weeks, I ran like probably 12 calls. And I slept all night. Fully functional throughout the whole shift. We actually done training and all that. And going to the paramedic side of it, we are hiring paramedics only in Wilson County. We have advertised that multiple times. In the last month, we have had that open and we have had 5 applications and one of those is full-time and the others was all part-time. Nobody, the problem is nobody wants to do the job anymore. And I don't, and the state and everybody else is trying to work and figure out what they can do that is gonna change that. And so far, the only thing that has benefited us up there was the recruit class that we did, but as far as pay goes, Sumner County's in the Nashville Fire Department. Every time they open up, they're getting 60+ applications. The 2 hires ago, they opened up for 12 positions. They got 18 applications for Nashville. That is unheard of. And they just lost 7 paramedics and are fixing to hire a whole bunch more. And they don't have enough applications to fill what positions they have open right now. So it's not just here, it's us, Wilson, it's Nashville, Rutherford's in the same, so it's just that nobody wants to do it anymore. Nobody, when you can go to a 2-year RN program and that double what a paramedic does, it takes 2 years to get a paramedic license. It's
So if everyone is having this problem, what are they doing to fix it?
They're trying to change shifts, you know, we're looking at 24/72s. The problem we're having with the 24/72 side of it is. You gotta hire a whole nother shift, we can't even staff what we got now. I mean,
It'd be the same way here.
it'd be the exact same, I mean, it's here, there's people that wanna do just EMS, the problem for us is we're an all hazards department, we do everything. Nobody wants to do that anymore, it's either I wanna do EMS or I wanna do fire, so we done a hybrid split. We're still in the same boat, and the county government up there is doing the same thing here, and the same thing Matt's doing, they're trying to figure out. We have committees, we have retention committees, and I mean, we're doing everything we can, and we are still struggling to find people who wants to work. Mount Juliet, they're doing a 4896, where their people's working 2 days straight on an ambulance and then getting 4 days off. They're, depending on the day, some of them loves it, some of them hate it. So, I mean, it's a systemic problem that we're all facing, and we can't, and we're trying everything we can to get people, and it's just not. It's hard, it is extremely hard.
You see nationals less, you look at pretty less. 60.
Yeah. So, and they've got 64 positions.
And they're starting their base out 68,000 a year, 30 pay days off. There's the insurance, pension.
And we started at 65 up there, so I mean, it's
Hey,
not a money thing.
It doesn't seem pay, doesn't seem to be the overwhelming deciding factor. There's. Like you said, there's too many other options in healthcare and other jobs that are more convenient schedule wise than.
I mean, Summit, you go to
Yes, sir.
Summit ER, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Summit ER, you go to Summit ER and that in Hermitage and work in the ER as a paramedic, and they're paying like $30 an hour. You ain't gonna get that in EMS unless you make a private service.
Right.
So.
That's why I'm confused.
So I guess my point of, circling that back around, when we had the debates about the overtime. The main argument was twofold. It was the cost to the county. And it was the health and safety and liability. Well, now it sounds like safety doesn't matter as much. It's just the cost of the county that's really the issue.
I don't think
And
that's
so-
true. I think safety is always an issue as well. I think it's,
But if we make a policy, as was discussed by the full commission, to, you're only allowed X amount of 24-hour shifts. If someone's coming without a day off from another county, you can't verify it. And they're still working we haven't fixed anything. We still have the safety and liability issue of them working 5/24s.
but like you said, if they're only doing 2 calls here while they're on staff, on for 24 hours.
So then it wasn't safety and.
No, it's definitely a safety issue. It's just a fine line here. It is a fine line that everybody apparently has to be walking and I think we're all just trying to figure out the best way to get through it.
And I'm just wanting to vocalize the back and forth of it. It is a two-edged sword.
Absolutely.
At some point, if we can't fully staff our ambulance service, don't we have to start looking at other options to either supplement or replace? If private can do it and they can afford it, maybe that has to be at some point because we just don't have the finances to go up to their level to be able to provide that service. It is not a state mandated service that the county has to provide. It is one we prefer to
100%.
provide, and we have tried to. And when Sumner Regional bought the ambulance service, that made it a complete mess. And we had to dig that out. If I'm not mistaken, Matt, you helped a lot of digging that out from that.
That's after me.
That's
before me.
Okay. So I see the negatives of it also. This seems to be some sort of just a lack of a better word, just a boondoggle of how do we best use the resources of the county to provide for our citizens?
That
And
is the
still be
question.
safe and reduce our liability for lawsuits and harm. We've been asking these questions for almost a year now.
Right.
And we keep circling around the same thing, but no decision really, or no
Mayor,
suggestions.
I think long term, we're going to have to make some kind of effort to attempt to grow our own. By following all states, EMS program or EMT program, we go to to an advanced EMT program and get someone to become paramedic. Right now, all of our, we don't have a paramedic that grew up in Charlotte County. They're all from that county. And that's not a short-term solution, but I see it as a long-term plan. Develops, you know, to stay here. Because they live, yeah.
Sure.
And that might be something we have to get TCAT involved with the high school. You know, they've already got a program there for nursing tech. It wouldn't take that much to take that and then move it to an EMT or to a paramedic, and then they go on to Ball State after for dual enrollment and whatnot.
Sure, Mr. Mayor.
Obviously with Myra Rye had worked for us last week, and she mentions the possibility that the state might come in and fund an entire class for EMTs,
Sweet.
which would be great.
Except we don't need EMT, right? We need
Yeah,
paramedics.
but you gotta start at EMT and get to the paramedic, so
Yeah.
it's at least a, yeah,
Okay.
stepping stone.
And hope that someone will in the advanced program, then maybe a few going. That's not a short-term solution, but it has long-term possibilities.
It may be the state had to change their protocol. That nobody get paramedics anymore, that they're gonna have to drop down and let EMTs be the. You know, advanced EMT or something, not, but not be paramedic. I know a lot of paramedics is top dog.
Sure.
I mean, they know everything, but they be able to shoot drugs, that's the difference.
There's the talk, I know right now, EMTs, they've expanded their scope. EMTs are fixing to be able to give, they're actually already in the process of training them, they're fixing to be able to give. Analgesics, they're fixing to be able to, do first round cardiac drugs and cardiac arrest. So I mean, they're trying to figure out from the state level what they can do, but I think what he's talking about, you know, the big thing that getting into schools and getting to these kids that are fixing to start graduating and giving them a career option, you know, and you gotta have county support. You gotta help them, you know, it's the same as, you know, you sign a 3-year contract, 4-year contract with us. We'll pay for your basic, we'll pay for your advanced, and we'll pay for your paramedic. And that's just something that, hey, here's an opportunity for us to do here. I mean, that's what we did with the recruits that we just had go through our side was they all signed a 3-year contract and all of them just finished advanced EMT school, and that was 17 people we just put on. So.
Madam Chairman, that's starting middle school. When I say long-term, I mean long-term. It may have to start middle school to start selling on the vehicles, what they could do, and you'll find some.
Matt, you were, you might be able to help me with this. This education point here, the difference between a paramedic and an EMT, besides just the training, is there a licenseship difference there?
Yes.
So it's just a
It's
matter
like,
of,
it's like LPN or those.
okay. Because LPNs can, to a certain level, can pass drugs and
Correct.
administer.
Yeah,
So
so there's some medications that EMTs can, advanced EMTs do, can administer. You start getting into like, whatever, narcotics, and pharmaceuticals medications, all this paramedic level. Cardiac medications, stuff like that, traditionally being reserved on the paramedic level. But there is a.
that's why there's the equipment and training there between an Army and 2-year and the paramedic.
The scope is, like, we can go work in the hospital and function. That's the only thing the paramedic can't do in the ER is like the initial assessment and hang blood. We can do everything the RNs can do, but RN can't go work on ambulance. So that's kind of a odd scenario, but yeah, I think it would be somewhat useful for today.
Anything else for ambulance service?
I actually got something I've been going over and been trying to figure out a way to present it, because it has to do with everything we've been talking about for months. Well, since we've been here about the overtime. We talked about how we needed more paramedics, and we're still talking about the same thing today. My question today, and this was asked by Mark Presley at the work session on April 17th. Who does the hiring of our paramedics in this town?
I don't know the answer to that. Mayor, do you
Somebody
know the
figure it
answer to that?
Your director does, but it has to go through the HR process as far as vetting that, those candidates.
Okay.
Certain criteria that any employee have to meet in order to clear HR. You have a personnel policy to go by.
Does that answer your question?
No, man. Here's where we at. The ordinance that was tried to be repealed. 66-2012-02 states that the county executive mayor shall not be responsible for any employee hiring, employee evaluations, disciplinary actions, terminations, employee work assignments, decision-making pertaining to the day-to-day operations of any budgeted departments. This ordinance, in my opinion, was violated due to the fact that we did have a paramedic show up and want to work for this county. There was 2 meetings, April the 13th and April the 18th, with this individual. And HR wasn't in those meetings. But he wasn't hired.
I think you'll find that the personnel policy was passed by the commission, take a precedent over the resolution
This is an ordinance.
or ordinance.
This ordinance goes with the charter.
The personnel policy is an ordinance as well.
So we have personnel policies, we got ordinances, and then we got charters. One says it can, one says it can't.
My understanding is the most recent one is the one that's effective,
Can you check the legal on that?
right?
I actually have. Each director per the charter or administrator shall conduct all department affairs. The HR policy wise, HR really wasn't even involved in this.
From day one. Depending on who you're listening to.
Well, the first sentence that was stated on April the 18th was, "You didn't learn not to say too much." This could go a bunch of different ways, really. Because he was qualified. He is on our rescue. But he wasn't able to pass HR to be a paramedic. I don't know. There's a lot of different things that was said in those meetings. It was stated that we was fully staffed. That he was acting unprofessionally, which was honestly, if it was off the clock out in public, it was his First Amendment right to have an opinion on who the fire chief was or is. There's a lot of different things going on with this situation that could go. That could go a different route. And the reason why this ordinance was put into place is to keep this kind of stuff from happening. At the very least, HR should have been in those meetings. If he didn't qualify through HR, she should have been in those meetings. He should have had access to his employee files.
I think maybe this might be a personnel issue.
Oh, it's going personnel,
Okay,
but we're
I don't-
talking about overtime. And
we
then
were talking about overtime,
Right,
Now
but
we're
the
talking
only,
about personnel issues.
right? This is personnel issues.
but the only way to fix overtime is to hire paramedics. And we're not hiring paramedics,
I don't hire anybody and you don't hire anybody.
no ma'am,
So,
but
but
the director, the department head does.
As long as they meet the qualifications through HR based on the personnel policy, that was an ordinance voted on by the commission.
Mhm.
And is precedent over that because it is the newest ordinance passed. The personnel policy was not a resolution, was not a suggestion. It was taken as an ordinance. It is law in Trousdale County.
Only if this is repealed.
Well,
Which
that
was
was,
stopped.
that was the point. We now have a conflict between the two.
Thank you.
Legal counsel says the more recent is what is in effect. That's why it was brought to just reconcile that.
Legal counsel would, since it's the county attorney.
Okay. Anything else?
Just
Legal
that
counsel's not here.
we're
so
trying to hire paramedics and it ain't happening.
I don't know anything about it.
I do, though. We'll bring it up personnel. We'll get it to Bob.
All right, moving on to fire department. Mr. Beeler,
Have a copy of printed report in your package. Currently, our volunteer member is at 20. We have recently been trying to purchase some equipment and upgrade a few things. On that list are items that have been requested, some have been delivered, some are in the order status, some are in the bidding status. Remember back earlier in the spring, we talked about there was a grant through the state fire marshal's office that would get you 6 air cylinders and thermal camera. The 6 air cylinders have been ordered and delivered. The thermal cameras are in the bidding process right now. Few things that we will need in the next budget cycle. Pitmaster roof chainsaw, they run about 3,500. Couple of new extension ladders. 10 sets turnout that we've talked about before. We put those numbers into the budget, so as soon as it's finalized, we'll be putting together some requests for bids and proposals from vendors. An update on the new brush truck. We did move some money around, some insurance recovery money, plus some ARPA funding money. And that created a pool that we could use to sign a commitment letter on the new brush truck. We did that the first of the week with the mayor's office. He had looked over the specs and the specifications. The old truck that we wrecked was a Weiss truck. This truck that the same sales rep is also a vendor for Skeeter brand. We like the configuration on the Skeeter. Basically, they were the same dollars. So we have signed a commitment letter for the Skeeter brand truck. One of the pluses was Skeeter already had a chassis. That means that we are expecting a truck somewhere probably between Thanksgiving and Christmas. They're still looking at about a 6-month lead time, but seems like 6 months is a lead time on any kind of vehicle. You can't get around it. When we were looking at Weiss, they did not have a chassis and were waiting on an option to get one. So that moved us in the direction of this other truck. It's configured slightly different. It will carry extra 100 gallons of water in the tank. It is an extended cab model truck, so some gear could be thrown behind the 2 seats. Whereas the other truck was just a straight 2-seater truck. Price tag on that, $238,535. The one we wrecked was about $170. So there's part of your inflation, and chassis alone went up about $40,000 on these things from one season to the next. But that is in the works, and we will finalize some proposals and do some slight modifications during pre-conference meeting. The wrecked brush truck, we're talking about taking that to Blankenship Body. We have not yet pulled the PO, but we're very close to doing that for his work. I do have the TCAT welding instructor who will look at the bed of the wrecked truck to see if he and their students can do a crossover walk bridge to replace the one that was badly bent when it hit the utility pole. I meet with him first of the week. So that's kind of an update. The money we moved between insurance settlement and ARPA money, hopefully we have carved out a chunk of that to repair that wreck truck and have us a second brush truck. All of the nozzles and hose connections on the wrecked truck, when we last checked them, were working and functional. So it was basically frame suspension type damage to the truck rather than pumping nozzles. If you'll, yes, sir.
On that one line there, I would suggest that if this particular project is more for TCAT to handle the scope of it, that maybe reaching out to a prime metal here in town.
They are going to involve tri-metal in the project because they may need some metal tubing and some particular bends and configurations that TCAT's not capable of doing. Yes.
I know they've been very kind to the county with a lot of projects, and so to be able to
Well, the
reach out.
instructor, that was his first go-to suggestion to try to utilize a local vendor, was to involve tri-metal. So that's in the works. Second page of my report shows our call activity January 1 through the end of May. Numbers of different calls, the breakdown, we had 48 calls. Total dollar loss from those calls, $405,650. Most of that occurred out of one garage fire where resident had two very high-end cars that he lost and a garage.
I'm noticing in your numbers there again,
Sir,
I'm noticing in your numbers there that the grass brush woodland, once again, is still your highest call.
correct. Correct. We're looking at about 7.5 personnel, 7.48 per call. Typically on an average per call, 3 trucks roll. And our average response time, about 8.1 minutes. From call inception to call complete or to arrive. The third page is our, it's just a little bit more detailed breakdown of the calls that we've had. This we can pull off of our NEFRS report, but it's the same data on the previous sheet, just broken down slightly different with some percentages behind it too. The next page is a pie chart. And when you look at this does not represent all calls. This only represents calls that were a fire. So it will not represent good intentions, leaks, the calls that we were requested as backup or wrecks or rescue. So this is strictly the 23 calls that were fires in nature and how they broke down. Structure fires, vehicle fires, outside fires, others. Any questions? If any of you want to see the details of the brush truck that we've ordered, I have a spec packet with me and you can look at it.
Did you have a question?
Now,
No?
I'm just gonna ask about the fire at the school. What would cause the truck to catch on fire?
We're pretty sure, David, it was an electrical issue. When the crews first arrived, the entire cab of the truck was what was on fire. And then secondary, the engine compartment caught fire, but primarily it was the cab. And when you looked at it after they had finished, it burned that cab completely up, and even the seats were down to the metal supports, so. I'm pretty sure it started in there, and about the only thing that can start one like that would be an electrical short somewhere.
I was told that somebody was, that the guy got out and walked away from it. There was a lady there, and she said it kept trying to start or something. Yeah, so you're probably right. It's something electrical. When then all of a sudden it went.
Yeah.
So,
It clicked enough that something happened.
yeah.
Any other questions for fire? Then we'll move on to rescue.
All right, before I get into my reports, I was asked by one of the members of this committee to provide everybody, with a, reading of what a medical first responder is in this county. We've talked back and forth multiple times of what they are, what their job is, and what their intentions are, and why we have them, and why they are needed. So I have printed off a copy of this for everybody, and let y'all read it. So basically a medical first responder in the community, they're an essential member of the emergency services team. They're typically the first trained personnel to get there at the scene when an emergency arrives, before an ambulance or the paramedics arrives. Their primary role is to provide immediate assistance and medical care to the sick and injured. And they're trained to assess vital signs, immobilize any fractures, injured limbs, control bleeding, or provide life-saving care before the ambulance arrives in many cases. I'll let y'all read some more of that down through there when y'all would like to. But motor vehicle accidents, cardiac arrest, sporting events, recreational activities, emergencies at home or in the workplace, or natural disasters. They assess the situation and the scene for safety, call for backup. A lot of our first responders are trained that if they get there and they assess multiple patients, that they can call and say, hey, we need another ambulance or need additional resources. They provide basic life support or advanced life support containing the airway, breathing, and circulation. They can administer oxygen, minimal medications depending on their level of licensure, control bleeding in trauma cases, provide first aid and administer basic medications, as I said there. But support and reassure the patients. A lot of these patients that we go out to, it's their worst time when they call. And for a first responder, that's the first glimmer of hope they have when they walk in the door. They may not know that they are just a medical first responder. They're not an AEMT or a paramedic. That may just have a basic EMR license. But that is their first glimmer of hope when they're in their time of need. That, hey, I've got somebody here that's going to help. So
Thank you.
I was tasked with that to provide that for you guys.
Thank you.
So for the month of April, training wise, extrication was completed. All personnel was recertified or initially certified, depending on the last time that they had it. Two of our members completed EVOC and Vanessa K instructor certifications, so they'll be able to teach those classes here in the county. So we now have a total of 3 of those on the rescue squad that can teach those classes. And we were more than happy to provide that to any other department here that needs that. We also had 3 members, and this is my fault for not putting that in there. We had 3 members that completed a lost person class in West Tennessee. They went up there and they learned how to get out in the woods and look for behavior of anybody that might be lost, whether it be children, teenagers, adults, certain behaviors that they may have that they can look at and see and know, hey, we need to go this way. So they spent a weekend up there doing that. As for vehicles, during April, Rescue 1 was out of service due to an antifreeze leak. Ended up being a heater core issue. That was the 5th time that truck has been in maintenance this year so far. So, hopefully we have that remedied for a little while. But as right now, Rescue 2 and Rescue 3 are still out of service. Those are the GMC and the 1986 truck that's up behind the service. Rescue 4 is in service, no issues with that. Boat 1 is in service. We actually responded on a boating call a couple weeks ago out on the Cumberland River. So both of our UTVs are in service, ATVs are running good. We have no major calls other than just your standard medical calls and some MBAs and manpower calls for the month of April. For the month of May, we had one member that just completed Swiftwater Rescue Level 1 training. As soon as the budget passes, he's going to be going to Level 2 training. He spent the weekend at the Ocoee River, jumping into the fast moving water up there and learning how to do Swiftwater rescue. So he completed that. Vehicles, pretty much the same there with all of those. So for the grant, we was awarded a grant for the initial thing that we put in for was for rescue struts and airbags. However, when they done the grant, not sure what happened with that whole thing. Apparently it's been a fiasco, but they did not award us a quarter of what we needed to pay for either one of those. So I was able to talk with the fire marshal's office and they were able to transfer that money and let us put it into purchase turnout with it. So I got the contract with that, sent it to Amy, let her and the mayor look over that. Got everything approved. I signed, they signed, and we sent that back. So have not heard whether that money has come in yet, but as soon as it does, we're gonna purchase 2 more sets of turnout gear with it. Equipment wise, turnout gear, we ordered 10 sets of turnout gear. That was done at the beginning of right there, beginning of May. We're looking at about a 55 to 60 day turnaround on that. So we've got 10 guys that'll have gear after we get the 2 sets from that. We'll have a total of 12 sets. So
Do you say 60 days? Do what? Did you say 60 days?
55 to 60 days barring any issues, but it did take a little while to get that back because we had a couple of the guys that they sized that they have not had sizing that small before, so they had to write up a new spec on it, so it took a little bit longer for us to get it on numbers. The new vehicle we have, the Chevy Tahoe, we went and picked it up about a week and a half ago. Brought it back, it is tagged. It's insured. The emergency equipment is ordered through Truckers Lighthouse. So as soon as that equipment comes in, they're going to get us scheduled in to take it to get the emergency equipment put in. We have issued a PO for that. So as soon as, like I said, as soon as we get that stuff.
Do you have a time frame on that?
Probably looking somewhere by the end of July, I would say, because there's quite a few departments that's in front of us on the installation side of this. But it is in service to be used for non-emergency responses. We are going to have a training over it here at the meeting. June 13th is our next rescue meeting. If anybody would like to attend that, we're going to have a training over it. There's a lot of things with it that is not like what we've had, so we're going to have to go over a few things just to make sure everybody knows that it's operational. We do have some safety features enabled on it that we enable for them to where they have to have their seatbelt on before the vehicle will go into drive. So be going over some things of that nature, but anybody that would like to come to that meeting, one of the new things we're doing, I was talking with Chief Beeler over this just a few minutes ago, but we've been using an app for a while called eDispatches. Basically what happens is when rescue is toned on a call, there's a computer in the office that is recorded. That audio recording comes through a scanner. It records that audio and in return it sends it out in a text message to everybody's phone so that they can listen to that audio recording. with that app that we were using, it's a beneficial thing for us, so that you don't have to carry a radio around everywhere you go and things of that nature. Tech support with them is a nightmare. We've had issues. We had a couple of guys that just disappeared off of our list a couple of weeks ago. Not sure what happened, called tech support. Those people just, it basically was told to look in the book and figure it out from that point. I was like, okay, well, here we go. So I've been looking at apps over the last little bit. Found an app that is, I call I Am Responding. This app is currently we are running in a 2-month trial with it. The difference between this and this one and what we have right now is this app is connected with the CAD system that is at the dispatch center. We was able to integrate that in, so when dispatch receives the call and they put all their notes into the system, as soon as they assign rescue to that call, it sends it out in the app with the address, what the nature of the call is, any information that dispatch puts into the notes. It also has a feature where you can click on the mapping system, and it will give you directions through either Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze as well. So you can check and route with it. You can clear on scene, whatever, and things of that nature. You can also go in there and put in LZ spots. If we know there's an LZ out by the prison, we can go in there and mark that so that everybody can look on the map and see that that's happening and know where those things are at. It's the big thing for that is to kind of help cut down on the radio traffic with dispatch. They've got a lot of vacancies they're trying to dispatch for, and there's a lot of information that we get just from this app. So we're trial running that right now. So far, I just got some tweaks done with it today. Hopefully that's going to be something that's going to be beneficial for us going forward. The other side that I talked to Chief Beeler and Director Beatty about is we can get these departments involved with it as well. Right now, the cost for e-dispatches is around $1,500 a year. The cost for this app is $800. And it does more than what e-dispatches does. So it's cost effective. We're getting more out of it. And at the stations, they can purchase TVs, put it on the wall in the stations at EMS, rescue, or fire. And there's actually a department screen that where they can put message that has a message board on it where they can put any messages they want. It shows apparatus status, it shows personnel status. And as soon as an incident is, you are assigned to an incident, it will flash on that screen in a red and make a bunch of noises. I haven't got to test that feature out yet, but it will alert them and let them know, hey, there's a call. It will send it to the emergency screen showing the address, the call, daily information, and it will show the actual popping up on the map. So looking at trying to trial that with us, and I think that's something that would be beneficial for all 3 departments going forward. So the 2-tone dispatching that e-dispatches does, this company offers that as well. So that's something we're gonna integrate with it as well, but we're just for right now. So, as far as rescue, that's what I've got for you.
You guys got questions?
Daniel, so I'm actually really excited to hear about the app. First question I have though is the $800 a year. Is that per department or is that just the county itself?
So as it stands right now, rescue is paying for the e-dispatches for rescue, and we are paying for the e-dispatches for the fire department. With this, if we go the $800 route with this, we're gonna, I mean, it's half that, but if the departments want to get in on it, I feel like it's a fair option that each department contributes 1/3 of each of the total price. And that way everybody benefits from that. And it's, I mean,
I guess where I'm trying to get with the question is, does the county buy one license for all departments? Or does each department have to buy a license to use the app?
from the way that I understand it, talking with them is it's one thing and you can add agencies into it. But it
And
has,
some of these apps have. They have different cost levels depending on how many users you have in your system.
Yeah.
If you have a small number of users, you have a lower price than if you had, say, 50 users on your system. So they typically will scale the price based on the number of subscribers or users you're using.
that's what E-Dispatches is. This is $800 flat,
Flat fee, okay.
$800 flat. So,
E-Dispatch has a.
yeah, they have like
system.
5 different levels depending on your call volume, but this one is, from the way I understand it, is $800 flat every year. I think it ends up being like 827, I think, taxes and all that stuff, but. So if this works out very well with the trial, our plan is to switch to this, after the budget year. And if we do that, the departments don't have to jump in right then, they can come in at a later time. But out of all the apps that I reviewed and talked with different agencies around the area that uses the different apps like Active 911, there's a new one that's out, some trying that I'm not a fan of just because it's new and I don't like new things and not. So I Am Responding is actually used by large agencies across the country. And I've talked with one out of Memphis. Memphis uses some of this and they love it. So with those using it and the price of it, I feel like this is something very positive and a step forward for us in the response side.
Great.
One more question, on the mapping side of things. So how detailed is it? I mean, so if I'm a volunteer, rescue, I get the call, it pops up on my phone, it goes to Google Map. Does it show just, the location and where I am, or does it show the location of other responders too?
It will show you the location of the call, and if other responders are logged in, it can show the location of other responders as well. But if you are responding to that call, each individual will have their own login for the app and on desktop. If they want to open it up on a desktop, they can. Each individual user will have their own login. When the calls comes in, they hit the map feature, they decide which mapping they want to use. It shows where they're at and it will give them directions to the call. It will show the location of the call, but as soon as you get mapping go,
So on the call there then, so it tells you, okay, so it's a motor vehicle call, there's already 10 people responding. Can you then say, okay, all right, so I don't need to respond at that point, or, I mean, because there has been discussion about people over responding to calls. Because you don't know who is going to respond. This app seems to be able to give you some of that information. I'm just wondering, answering those questions, is this a viable solution for that? Or is it still all hands on deck until you get to the scene?
this is probably where we're going to disagree.
I'm not.
I'm
Can't have too many.
I will not, and will, unless I am forced to, tell anybody on my department they are not allowed to respond to a call. I have 20 people on my department. I'm fully staffed. I got 3 applications in holding. I can tell you that we normally do not have over 10 or 12 people that respond to a call at a time. But I know that I was asked to put a limit on how many people responds to a call. But until we get to the call and know what type of call it is, I will let everybody that's available coming to me. If I get there or somebody gets there and sees, hey, we don't need rescue, we can cancel you, or hey, need 2 or 3 of you to come on. But that's something that I'm not going to do. I'm not going to stop people from responding to calls because we don't know what we have until we get there. Things can change in the heat of the moment. I mean, and I don't know if anybody's seen the vehicle accident where the vehicle was coming down the interstate and went airborne on the back of the wrecker. Things, not that scenario, but those things can play out there. And I know from the sheriff's department standpoint, the rescue squad helps direct traffic and control the scene there to keep everybody safe. And if we have enough people responding, those people can do that. So the sheriff's department can do what they need to do, as well as the ones that may be cutting on the car, or, we may have somebody in a ravine, things of that nature. So that's where I stand on that. And I know I'll probably catch backlash from some, but I mean, I've been doing this for 23 years and I've never been told not to cut back on how many people I have.
I appreciate the information.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? All right, next is other discussion. Anybody have anything to discuss? Okay, I do. I would like this committee to discuss merging all the departments and what that entails, merging rescue, fire, and EMS. I would love to hear your opinions on this. I would just like to start the discussion.
So the first step in that process would be having to get the voting public to change the charter, wouldn't it?
Right, I mean, we'd have to get the legal, what we have to do legally to change the charters and all of those things. But yeah, I would like to start that discussion.
And they're talking about putting a referendum up for the wheel tax that's could
Right.
also be tacked onto that same with minimum cost, I would think.
Do you have an opinion? As the EMA director?
I mean, it works well to me. I think it's for the department, it's the size that we have, it's a very viable option.
My thoughts are that if we have full-time paramedics and EMTs on staff now, why? And there's a need or there's a want in the community to have full-time fire personnel. So if we could have ambulance service that is fire trained and rescue trained, like WEMA, like that, I just think it's time for Charles County to move in that direction.
I will say, I think it's gonna be a long-term project.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, the people now, I mean, I don't think we're gonna be able to say, you want to work here, you want to do both. So it's gonna be like a hiring process throughout, in the future, saying, well, this is what the expectation is now, is that you're got the capability to do both.
That makes sense.
And the thing that I wanna express is if this is something that the county is wanting to do and the citizens wants to do, hire the people to do it right way.
Absolutely.
Don't shorten. You need to have a minimum of 3 people available to be on an engine at one time to respond to a house fire or an MVA.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's something that you're gonna have to look at as well when you do that, because from our standpoint, I mean, I'm at a station where there's 2 trucks and 2 people, so I jump on whatever apparatus they tell me to jump on when the tones go off. But at other stations, we got 2 on an ambulance, 2 on an engine. Can't fight fire with 2 people on an engine. So,
And my thoughts were that we have full-time staff there, but then we also utilize volunteers and we still keep that as part of it.
that's your background.
Absolutely. Yes, I agree with that. Do you guys, commissioners, do you have any thoughts on this?
I guess one thought would be, whether or not we try to, merge fire and rescue first to see how that goes. If we were going that direction, because we were almost there.
I mean, I guess I don't know if that's easier.
They're both volunteers, so you've got that going for you.
Yeah.
You're not mixing volunteers with paid county employees, so that makes it a little easier there, but we still have to get the whole charter thing squared away.
Absolutely.
And I really don't know what the legal process on that, other than just doing a referendum on the next election. And just let the people decide what they want to do. I think going to a paid fire department, there's no way you don't do a huge tax increase on the public. There's no other way to do it with a jail coming. That's a lot of manpower you're gonna have to pay for. And I'm curious, so we're struggling to get paramedics. How's the firefighter hiring going? I'm guessing it ain't much better, is it?
It's
As far as paid.
Depends on.
Depends on. I mean,
Yes.
people don't want to do both, and you run into that kind of a speed bump sometimes. I don't think it's impossible to overcome. I think it's gonna be a long-term project to recruit the people that want to do that.
I couldn't imagine it happening within 5 years, maybe 10.
Yeah, that would be a probably reasonable expectation.
There's a whole lot of logistics that will have to go into it before it's.
And then just the hierarchy of leadership down the chain.
So I think you're looking at. I mean, even like Paso, who's our from, the governing body, the Tennessee Ambulance Service Association. I mean, they're not expecting staffing to return to anywhere pre-COVID, probably in the next 5 to 10 years. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So I think that would be a reasonable timeframe to integrate EMS fully into that scenario. I will say, maybe one shift you can have that, and then maybe the shift you don't have that full time, maybe something you take baby steps into, or if you want to go full speed into it, it's gonna be
I think at that point, your leadership is gonna be the most important, that everyone's working together and on the same page. Otherwise, it's just gonna be a mess.
The one thing I'll say about doing that is you hit the key term a minute ago, with your volunteers. You can't forget about your volunteers, because when we went to a combination department in Putnam County before I moved down here, we started all volunteer. When the transition started, the volunteers got mad because they're not getting paid. They're doing it for free. We got these guys getting paid. We're doing it for free. The fire department came up with a way, the fire department come up with the way, took it to the county agreed with it, to where volunteers can come in and work on the truck if they want to. They come in and work 12-hour shifts, 24-hour shift if they want to, and they get paid per call. Like, if they run 2 calls that shift, they get paid like they was if they were volunteering from the house, but they're actually there staffing the truck and doing it for free. So you have to incentivize your volunteers and not forget about them, because if you forget about them, you lose it all.
So I would think training is gonna be a huge part of that process too, that everyone is on the same trained, certified level. So that as you have your paid employees that have their certifications and have their licensure, when you make your steps down, everyone is working at the same level and know, that guy knows just as much as I do. You have that reliability. If we're gonna combine them, we gotta have those standards of knowledge across the board. So I see it as a huge undertaking. I can see the benefits and I can see the pitfalls that I've heard discussed in previous commissions.
Sure.
I think it has to go before the people and just see what they want to do. And then go from there. I guess we'd have to take that before the full commission
Absolutely.
and let them.
I think we need more information, though, the whole process, and
It will need to start with the charter review committee. And then from there, take it steps forward.
I don't believe the charter review committee has even met since the election.
I don't think they've had a
A
reason.
lot of times they don't meet until they have a reason.
I will speak with the county attorney and bring back more discussion for the next meeting. Any other discussion?
Would we need to, if we go forward with trying to combine just fire and rescue, would we need to go ahead and try to put a chief in that will do both of the
I would think so, yes.
Or you would have a leader, like we have now, we still have 3, and then you would have one person be coordinated between all 3.
I would think Matt would Matt.
I would think that's what EMA would,
Yeah,
but now Matt volunteers for that position. He's not paid for that position, so I don't know if Matt would be willing to do that. I don't want to volunteer you.
Matt volunteers for what? You're the EMA director, right?
EMS is what he gets paid for.
No, he is paid out of the E EMA.
Yeah, I get paid out of the EMA line item grant purposes for the EMPG money, but it's weird, I know, but technically I'm the EMS director.
Okay.
On paper, it's more than grant purposes.
Okay,
Well, volunteer for one, so whichever one you want to make it be.
I think that's part of the discussion that we have to have moving forward is. I would think that the EMA director, yes, would be over all of it.
Yeah.
For sure.
yeah, we got a good ways through this process a couple years ago, and then it didn't get passed by the commission. Like, I wasn't in favor of it at the time, and so it just got dropped there. So I don't know if we want to bring up that paperwork, like that's whenever Jay started being involved was during that process. That way we maybe have something to look at, like how it goes.
Go ahead.
Obviously, Daniel has more experience with the wing department than Joey Cooper and Jeremy Hobbs. So he's the EMA director and chief, and then Joey Hobbs is over the fire department, so there's the chief over each department. underneath.
Right.
So that's a similar structure that we.
That's what I'm thinking. Obviously, this is all just
Yeah.
hypothetical, you know.
I mean, if you do it, the way that you would have to have it is you would have an EMA director. Because technically, and I think it's. The EMA director is considered a fire chief. And by the way that it's labeled out in certain places in the state. But overall, you would have the EMA director and then you would have your sub branches off the EMA director. It goes back to the incident command system. Basically, you would have your EMA director. You would have your EMS chief, you would have your fire rescue chief. And then your divisions below that would branch out from safety officer. And I mean, it'd be up to the EMA director on how he wanted to position that. Because if you appoint the way that it was, the way it is up at Wilson County is the EMA director, he is assigned by the mayor. The mayor is who puts that person in that position. From that point forward, the EMA director, he picks his fire chief, he picks his EMS chief. And then he lets the EMS chief and the EMS and the rescue and the fire rescue chief pick his captains, lieutenants, battalion chiefs, whatever, however he's.
Right, and all of that would have to be spelled out in the new charter or new, all of that.
You would have to have that organization.
Right, it would all be.
I
spelled
can
out.
get y'all in this organization chart just as a thing, if y'all want to look at that, just.
Mr. Nallner, you were the chair when they discussed this in the past. What, do you have paperwork and all of that?
I was trying to think where it's at. I had all that. I think I put it up somewhere. Thought maybe we'd come back to it one of these days. I mean, I'm trying to think of our organizational chart. I think we had the fire chief in charge, and each department was in charge, but he was underneath the chief. And he worked on down.
Okay.
Through the loop, each department had their own boss, but they just. Of course, the mayor was still the. Main, you know,
Absolutely.
but I think, I can't remember, we had it. All worked out, it just never did get forward, so. Fell out, it died and.
I
Yes,
don't
sir.
know if Rita may have that stuff.
Right, I was thinking I could go back and look at the minutes and see,
Yeah.
go back and look
Yeah,
at
that's
those and see what I can find. Yeah.
I
Oh,
think
well,
the other issue we would have in that scenario is you've got a volunteer fire chief over paid for,
right,
and so.
but I think it wouldn't be a volunteer position anymore at
Yeah,
that
it
point.
would have to be, I would think. it would
It'd have to be the lead, right,
At one time, we. Voted in a couple of committees, but it never did get no farther than the committee to get to the full. Department, but we were going to pay the chief. $25,000 a year to do the paperwork. And
the fire chief,
fire chief.
and then, but he would be
And he
over,
would be the only one that was gonna be paid.
and you guys were just talking about merging fire and rescue, not EMS as well.
No, I don't really have this now. We were
Okay.
just fire and rescue.
It was all three.
Was all three?
Do what?
It was all three.
I think,
Was it all three? Yeah, it was. It was. Yes, I'm sorry. It was all three.
and I think when all three
That's
got pushed back, it dropped down to just doing the two volunteers, and then that got shot down also. My thought is, if you've got your EMA director, who's your fire chief, as Daniel was alluding that they have at WEMA, then that's your paid position. Right, you've got that one, so you're actually creating a new paid position, because you still have to have an EMS director. Unless your EMA director is gonna do all three positions.
Right.
And at some point, if you're gonna do that, now it's a manpower thing, you know? Is one person in a situation gonna be able to coordinate all three, being a chief of two of the departments,
Understood.
so.
Anybody have anything else to add?
And it's a. For the fire side of it, then the EMS side of it branched off of that EMA. The EMA director, he does EMA. He does all the emergency management. He oversees the fire side, he oversees the EMS side. But essentially, Ryan Newberry is the EMS chief. So he is the EMS director of Wilson County. Jeremy Hobbs, he is the fire chief of Wilson County and oversees all fire rescue operations. Joey basically oversees the overall management of all of it, but as far as the ones that operates those divisions, it is Ryan Newberry and Jeremy Hobbs. So for here, it would be, I don't know how you would do that here.
It would either be the fire chief and EMA director, or EMA and EMS director, or the fire chief and rescue chief under. But yeah, so that would kind of be what we already have effectively.
It would essentially be, I think the EMA being at the top and then have your either part-time fire chief or your part-time EMS chief or your full-time EMS chief and full-time fire. Making all three of those a paid position and then branching down from that. But I mean, there's, like I said, there's a lot of logistics that's going to go into it, a lot of funding.
And I think on it changed the, you know, whatever, the mayor, it says chief answers to the mayor. That was what was the big, that was a big cloud that got in the way. And then, of course, that never was changed.
But that can easily, the wording can be changed, where the chief reports to EMA, and EMA reports to the mayor. It still puts the mayor at the top of the pyramid, and that's the way Sumner's done. That day full of pyramids we got to sit through on that training.
All right, any other discussion on that? Any other discussion at all? The next meeting, I am gonna be out of town in July. Are you guys okay with not having a meeting in July? And let's meet back in August. So we're gonna shoot for the first Wednesday in August at 7 p.m. because that works best with Amber. It's okay with everybody else. First Wednesday in August. I'm sorry, I changed it. It'll be 7 o'clock. Moving forward, it'll be 7 o'clock. First Wednesday, August.
I just
7.
have to,
I will not be.
Okay, it's first Wednesday.
I'm just trying to keep it in kind of a set, moving, first Wednesday of every month.
That's fine. I will be able to be here because I'll be on shift, but
Okay.
I'll send all my stuff to everybody. Or I'll hang with my.
Very good. Anything else? Do I hear a motion to?
Motion to adjourn.
second.
We are adjourned.